There it is. Here we go.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Sunday, fun day. We're going to make it a fun day.
Sunday, fun day. And I put it in the comments there, but our friend John Lucido from Nebraska is watching with Jeannie. And I'm so sorry to the genies that you're stuck with John this morning. Well, it's 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
It's early today.
Hour early.
I have to say, for us to come live an hour earlier than we normally do is a little odd. Just saying, I'm not used to the.
No, we've only done later. We haven't done earlier.
We did
right?
noon for Amleto and Bob Learn when we had the birthday cake.
Oh, that's right. We had this birthday.
We had the birthday cake.
And that threw me off too.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm sure, like me, I have like a
routine
in the morning. So now when that routine gets jumbled a little bit, it's like okay. But on the other hand, I kind of like it because now I have an extra hour.
You got an extra hour. It's like daylight savings. Fall back. You get an extra hour.
I like that. I hope I don't like it too much because then I might ask to switch to 1 o'clock. But I'm sure we'll be fine.
And of course, it wouldn't be the weekend if Joe Calla wasn't here with us.
Back to back. Yesterday, today,
live
I get
in the studio.
Yeah, I got a Saturday and a Sunday. Today I have a Knicks hat on.
Oh, because he's so.
Well, Peter, covers the Yankees, the Islanders, the Knicks, but the Yankees are that's my heart. You know that. But because I'm with my Met fan friends here, I said I'll spare the Yankee cap, which I have about 18 of them, and I'll wear the one Knicks cap that I have. Because even though the Knicks are terrible, I'm a Knicks fan through and through.
Isn't it hard to believe that a city like New York cannot field a competitive, at least consistently competitive,
I know, it's frightening,
basketball team?
I know, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
I don't know. It's like any sport team.
And 2 awesome stadiums.
2 beautiful, beautiful arenas.
Yeah, well, since Isaiah Thomas touched the Knicks like that much, just a little touch of Isaiah Thomas, it's been all downhill. But that's Dolan. I'm not going to get into it.
Right.
But
I'm sure there's
James
other things
Dolan.
that play
It's Dolan.
into that.
Yeah, he should go.
Maybe Peter can
maybe Peter
some
can
light
say
on
he
that
should go
for us.
play his guitar and play with his band and please sell the Knicks.
Hey, and because Joe, you're here with 2 fellow Met fans.
Yes.
I'm going to start off with the meme of the day.
Okay, that's fine.
And this is courtesy of every Met fan.
Okay.
Out there.
Hey, wait! I think I know those guys.
Naz. Yankee fans be like,
so much shit. Yeah.
Oh,
well, you know what?
They look like true Met fans.
Yeah, game 1 of this season, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Although, we've had, honestly, the team is moving, I think, in a good direction. We've had a couple of years of real bright spots. I mean, we've had great players come on, and whether it's like Pete Alonso that they really kind of took a chance on, the whole contract thing, playing with his contract.
Yep.
Or, like people don't even think about it, like Jeff O'Neal.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that when he came, that he would have been,
he could hit.
Changer that was. And
he could flat out hit that kid.
Yeah.
Yep,
So, I think that for the most part, Met fans, and of course we have Jason DeGrom, who is.
See, and now of course we get this right back.
Well,
although I do like this one. This is funny.
Kevin.
Butler.
Yeah, Butler. That's true with the Knicks. It's true, but it starts with Dolan, Rob. But still, you're right.
Hi, Lizzie.
Hey, Liz.
So, welcome to episode 56.
Lawrence Taylor.
Oh,
episode 56.
There it is.
See,
quick with the numbers.
Quick with the numbers. So episode 56, live from Rabs, from inside the insane asylum that we call Rabs Country Lanes.
Yep.
We certainly miss having you all here on the lanes with us, but it's certainly fun. And I hope you guys have been enjoying the show every day. And it's day 62 of the quarantine.
62.
It's been a long couple months. Before we know it, we're going to be back in action, like some of the other states.
Yeah.
I have before we bring our guest in. This is another one I want to share because did you guys happen to see the new South Carolina? There's a restaurant
No,
There's some funny stuff happening in businesses around the country.
People are kind of trying to adjust, using their
distancing,
whatever wild ideas they may have.
Well, yesterday we talked about the one from Germany
the
with
pool
the
noodles. Yeah.
which I don't know if it was real or not. This one is real. There's this restaurant in South Carolina. Instead of
mannequins.
Instead of putting tape across the boots, they've opted for they're not mannequins. They are blow-up dolls.
Oh, okay.
And that may be a little worse. There is a Manhattan.
But I will say, I thought that was neat.
Yeah.
They force people not to want to sit in their favorite booth.
Yeah. There is a bougie restaurant in Manhattan. I can't remember the name of it.
The guy on the left is creepy.
That he is, especially since he's looking right, like you feel like he's looking right at you. There is a restaurant in Manhattan that is doing the same thing with very fancy mannequins.
Really?
Oh.
Yes. Very. Okay. I'm gonna try. I'll pull that up and I'll send it to you.
Maybe tuxedos are in order.
Yeah, John, you're right. I thought it was brilliant when I saw the story. Yes. And the owner of the restaurant was being interviewed by the local. I think it was the Fox affiliate.
Yeah.
And she just said, "I don't want it to be ugly. I don't want people to be looking at caution
empty.
tape.
Right.
You don't want to see empty.
Right.
And they interview all the patrons
that were there in between the mannequins.
Oh, she's got the hots for me. She's looking at me. And this one lady was in the restaurant for 2 nights in a row, and she's like, "I can't wait to come tomorrow night and see my friends sitting in the same booth." So she dressed them up in their own clothes.
Very nice.
They really made the best of it. I think we'll see a lot more of that creativity.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for filling the booth.
Yeah,
and because it is, even though people are, this is my opinion, people are anxious to go back to the things that they had.
Definitely.
It is kind of depressing if you were to sit in a place
emptiness
that is, only filled by a quarter.
Yeah, that's true.
So, kind of like that broken window syndrome. Yeah. So I listen, I think this is a great idea.
It's a good idea.
Plus it gives people something to laugh about. And
talk about people watching.
Right.
Yeah. And it even reminded me, put some bowling shoes on them. Listen, don't be surprised if you came and and if we had to do some distancing in the beginning.
Yeah,
you never know what you might
pull
find.
My mannequins out on the line.
Yeah.
That one mannequin in the pro shop creeps me out sometimes, especially that there's nobody in the place and I look quick and I think
somebody's standing
and it's moving because you guys are doing moving stuff around and it's been in different spots.
I think I'm going to draft that mannequin next year.
It actually reminded me.
He's going to be on my team. I'll draft him. I'll draft him just so he feels welcome.
He's a C.
Yeah, he's a C. So I'll draft him. That's fine. No
it reminded me. I don't know if you've seen the app Quip, QUIP.
No.
So I think it's Quip, right? Yeah. You see a bunch of different series. Liz is laughing. Do you know what I'm going to mention?
No.
Oh, so this application, it's all like short TV shows and news clippings.
Okay.
So like the first month is free, and then
I
just launched this.
Advertised.
They're advertised everywhere. However, there's one with Anna Kendrick, and it's called Dummy. And it's a story about. It's about her as a writer. It's not true life. It's of course.
Right.
And they're all 8-minute episodes. And she develops this relationship with a sex doll that speaks to her.
Okay.
But it's basically her speaking through it's the weirdest thing in the world, but it's hysterical. But that made me think, and she's hysterical. So I actually thought that it's a new medium, some great funny content, news content, and it's quick. Like I think there are 10 episodes, so it's like an hour long total, and you can go back and forth. That one happens to be very odd and funny. And that odd thing, that's the first one that came across my page.
Quip. Okay.
Quip. Check it out. It's a little purple icon. Anyway, hey, we have a really special guest with us today. Guys, introduce our guest.
Oh, our guest today is Peter Botte. And I think Joe's been reading up on him a little bit.
Yeah, well, Peter, I've read many of his works because he has been covering the Yankees for quite a while, and the Knicks and the Islanders. And as I said, I think yesterday, I said it. Or was it last week? No, I think it was yesterday. I said, I'm one of the 3 Islander fans that actually bowl here. Everybody else is a Ranger fan. So I look forward to Peter's writings because he writes about the Islanders. He covers hockey. But, being I'm an Islander fan, there's not many of us around. So I always enjoyed reading Peter's works.
And Peter, you write for the Post?
Yeah, I was at the
he's muted.
I was at the Daily News for about 20 years.
Go ahead. Right.
I was at the Daily News for about 20
you're
years,
good.
and I went
No,
back.
he's
Now
not.
you're off.
No,
Oh.
got a little delay.
Okay.
Good.
Oh, hang on a second.
Hold on.
I'm going
Think
to
that's
take
you?
him out and bring him back in.
Okay.
All right, kick them out.
How's that now?
Hey.
You guys got me?
No.
Peter, I'm going to do this. Do me a favor. Leave and
Yep.
come back, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And we'll get you back in. I'm sorry about that. We'll get Peter right back in.
Yeah.
We don't want to. A delay is one thing, and then the sound. I thought it was actually the TV. I was getting ready to
put the sound up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I didn't check it today like I should
And no, this isn't done intentionally because
have.
Because he's an Islander. Because he writes for the Islanders. It's okay.
Oh, it's too funny. All right, hi Peter.
Hi guys, can you hear me now?
That's
Yes.
better.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Better.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, welcome to Live from Raps.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me.
thanks for coming.
So you were just saying, so he columnist for the New York Post, but you were with the Daily News for how long?
20 years?
For 20 years, from '97 to until 2017, and then I got hired back at the Post in October of last year. I had started my career at the Post in 1990. Was there for about 7 years. Went to the Daily News, and now I'm back at the Post.
Great.
Two totally different outlets.
Yeah.
Two totally different experiences, I'm sure, for you.
Absolutely, but it's been a lot of fun. Almost 30 years in New York tabloids. It's been I've seen a lot of fun stuff over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, with the
Yeah.
characters that we've had play sports here, that's for sure. We've had many characters, right?
And
for sure.
plenty of stories to tell.
Yep.
And so in that time frame, you've written a lot of different things covering all sports. But then you have your niche with the Yankees and the Islanders. And so, are you a fan? How did that niche become to be within your work? Is it just because of the super fan in you, or hey, were you assigned? Hey, you need to go do this.
Oh no, definitely. It's you do what you're assigned. Really, you have to keep your fandom out of it whenever you're covering any of these teams in New York. I mean, that's the number one rule, right? So,
Yep.
I grew up on Long Island. I actually was I was a Mets fan, I was a Giants fan, I was an Islanders fan as a kid. But that kind of all went out the window once you start your career.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool. I mean, just the fact that, being a Islander fan from when they first started, I would imagine, right? From when they first came into the league, they came in.
Yeah, like a few, maybe mid 70s, probably, I would say.
Yeah, so you probably suffered a little bit of the same heartbreak I did, always losing to the Canadians in like 77, 78, and then getting beat by the Rangers in 79, which I don't think I'm still over that one. But then they came back to win, the next 4 years, win those cups, and it was a great run.
Right, and you've seen that in other sports too. Like, everyone's watching this Michael Jordan 30 for 30 series right now. And, teams have to go through the losing sometimes before they can get to that level of winning championships. The Bulls had that with the Pistons, and, the Islanders certainly had that in the late 70s as they were building up, ahead of that dynasty that came about in the 80s.
Yeah, for sure. That was a hell of a run. And I still say that, when they lost to Edmonton in 84, I don't know, a couple of bounces here and there, maybe that series turns around differently. But I think it was just Edmonton's time. It was their turn.
I mean, they won 19 playoff series in a row, right? So let's not get too greedy with it, right?
Yeah, but I'm a New Yorker. You always want to. That's true. Yep. So, who was one of your favorite players covering for them, Peter? Or who from like back at that time, who was one of your favorite Islanders when you first started covering the team?
I started my first year covering the Islanders for the Post was in '94.
Okay.
And then immediately in in training camp that year, they ended up having a lockout. The season was only like about half the season.
Correct. Yep.
But there were players like Darius Kasparidis was a really fun player to cover. Ziggy Palffy was a fun player to cover in my early years covering the team.
Uh-huh.
And then there was I know he's like kind of like Voldemort from the Harry Potter series. I'm not supposed to say his name, but Milbury was a lot of fun to cover.
Oh gosh.
On those Islander teams. I mean, he was a kind of guy. He was almost like a poor man's Steinbrenner, right? Like he would say anything, and he would kind of have these outlandish quotes, and he wouldn't be afraid to criticize his own players or the league or things like that. So, I know fans aren't enamored of Mike Milbury, Islander fans, but for anybody covering the team, he was like gold. I mean, he was the kind of guy that you could go to every day and get a fun quote.
A quote book, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
If you think about all the players that he traded away, guys that he traded away, like probably not one All-Star team, he might have traded away 2 All-Star teams. Chara, Luongo, Palfi, that you mentioned, all those guys, he traded them all away.
Yeah, he did. I mean, obviously he was under heavy financial constraints also with some of them, not all of them. Some of them were just huge blunders.
Right.
You know, Palfi, he had to trade because it was it was a contract situation, and the Islanders' payroll was easily the lowest in the league. I mean, I covered that year that John Spano defrauded the league and the team, and I appeared in that 30 for 30 on ESPN. That was really well done by Kevin Connolly.
I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun year, but there were times in that era where they weren't even trying to be competitive, and they had to trade away a lot of players. But yeah, he definitely made some mistakes, though, some huge mistakes on guys who ended up having Hall of Fame careers.
Yeah, he certainly did. I mean, but you know what? I mean, he did try to. I guess did try to build with some young talent, players that he got back or whatever picks, but it just was a rough couple of years there for a while.
Absolutely. People forget too, though, that in 4 of his last 5 years as GM, they actually made the playoffs.
Yes, they did.
Which he doesn't ever get the credit for that because he made so many other mistakes. But those teams, I covered those teams in 2002, 2003 for the Daily News.
Yep.
That series with Toronto in 2002 might have been one of the bloodiest playoff series that I've ever been around. I've covered a lot of hockey playoffs over the years, and that was one of the most cutthroat playoff series I can ever remember.
That was brutal. That was. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he did go out. He got guys like Pekka, and he got Yashin and those types of guys. He tightened up the goaltending with Osgood.
Right.
So he did make some good moves, but I think he'll always be known as the guy that kind of made that whole, he kind of crumbled the whole thing, but he'll just get that probably wrapped forever,
Right. Well, that was my first book with Alan Hahn of ESPN MSG called Fish Sticks, which I know is a sore subject for some Islander fans because of the jersey change and the logo. It looked like the Gorton's fisherman.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was an interesting time. I mean, for anybody who grew up with the Islanders in the 80s, to have seen that stretch in the 90s was really tough.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I don't want to hog up all people's time.
No.
Yeah.
Reaching out.
Sure. You're on a roll. And it's funny. These guys get a bad rap.
Yeah.
I don't. There's a craft when it comes to writing, but the sports writers constantly get a bad rap for no matter what you say or what you write. Right, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right or wrong. And so it's always interesting to hear their perspective and to their take, especially on these things. Write a book. Islander fans weren't happy at the time, and then his perspective comes in play. So I always find it interesting talking to any of them.
That's cool.
So that's cool. Hey, there's a couple questions from the viewers here first.
Yeah.
So, Peter, who would you consider to be your toughest interview? And then, of course, the easiest one, but I think that the toughest interview for sure.
That's a good one. I mean, I feel like most guys, for the most part, are okay with the media. They understand the reason that we're in there, and that we have a job to do. But I mean, some guys could be ornery. I remember like Randy Johnson when he was on the Yankees those couple of years. It was a disaster. But he didn't get it. I mean, he came from kind of small market teams in Seattle and Arizona, and he didn't understand why people were coming up to him every day trying to ask him questions. He wasn't a big fan.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, in his first day as a Yankee, when he arrived in New York, he was like the day before his press conference. One of the TV cameras caught him like on the sidewalk outside, and him and his security guard kind of got in a tussle with the camera guy. I mean, it's like, hey, welcome to New York, man. I mean, if this is if you want to play, for the Yankees, that's part of the deal, And I think most guys understand that.
Yeah.
Easiest one. I mean, there are a lot. I mean, a lot of guys really are excellent at the craft. I think one guy that most New York writers would turn to would be David Cohn, who you see him now on broadcast and you realize how kind of engaging and he is. But he was the kind of guy that would step up in the Yankee clubhouse and kind of hold court with the media just to allow all his teammates to not have to do it. You know what I mean? Like he would call guys over and he would, just kind of shoot the breeze with the reporters, and I think in a lot of ways that kept guys away from Jeter and A-Rod and people like that as much over the years. Guys who would be willing to do that kind of full court with the media, and Cohen is definitely one of those guys.
Yeah, he's great on. I mean, he does a great job too when he's on. Yes, phenomenal. And I read that before all the coronavirus stuff happened, that there was a chance he might have been working for the Sunday night games, ESPN. I think he was going to do a dual, work for Yes and work for the other networks too.
Yeah, that was in discussion. I know Andrew Marchand of the Post, who covers sports media for us, reported that. But I guess they weren't able to work out terms of a deal.
Yeah.
But for my money, Cohn, I feel like we're spoiled in New York because I feel like Cohen and O'Neill and John Flaherty, and then on the Mets side, Darling and Hernandez. We have some of the best analysts in baseball in New York.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel like generations of young fans who are watching can learn a lot by listening to those guys and the stories that they tell, both as a player and in retirement. I think all those guys really kind of spoil us in New York.
Yeah. I agree.
For sure.
Yep. Reggie Johnson and that medium reminds me of our Walter Ray Williams.
Yeah.
That same he's tough to pull out.
Yeah.
That same demeanor.
Yeah. Some
and
guys
both great athletes.
Yeah, but they're not comfortable.
No.
Yeah.
Speaking with the media, I do remember that Johnson. I think he like took his hand was like a mitt, and he was like, "Don't talk back to me," and he pushed the camera. Yeah, I was like, "Oh my God, this guy's going to wear the pinstripes now." Here we go, And he wasn't a shell of the pitcher that we thought we were going to get. He was okay, but he was so, to Peter's point, he was so uncomfortable
in the whole
everything.
Yeah,
he just never really materialized here.
Well, he went from being the big fish, in the little pond, to the little fish in this big pond.
He was a big fish, all right.
And forget about the fact. Great athlete, but totally different environment.
The whole environment.
And the media
I'm sure Peter can attest to this. There are athletes that just don't thrive in this atmosphere. It's being in a fishbowl.
Yeah.
You're constantly, and it's not just you're on field. It's everything you do. Where are you eating dinner? And it's just a lot.
Yeah.
Playing in New York is a lot, and you make a little mistake in a game, and you have 50,000 critics in the stands.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Another example of that, for whatever reason, Sonny Gray didn't work out here either. He was an all-star in Oakland.
Yeah.
And he had a great year last year in Cincinnati. When he got out of New York, he just wasn't comfortable here either. And you could tell, and he got defensive sometimes with the media, and it just kind of translated to what he was doing on the mound. And sometimes guys just for whatever reason, they're not made for this town. There are some small town guys, somebody like a Don Mattingly, who love New York. You know what I mean? Who were like a perfect fit for this town. I guess it's all about your personality, more so than where you come from. But sometimes guys just aren't ready to handle everything that comes with being a player in New York. You're not just a baseball player here. There's a lot of other components to it.
Yeah, for sure. So Peter, how would you rate the Yankee managers for the last 25 years or so? How would you say it was going from like Torre to Girardi, he always seemed a little bit more like tense Girardi, a little uptight, to a guy like Boone, who reminds me more of like a Torre type. How do you feel on that?
Yeah, it's hard to compare anybody to Joe Torre when it comes to dealing with all the pressures of the job. He was able to deflect George Steinbrenner when George was still in his heyday, and Joe was just the right fit at the right time. I mean, people forget, Joe had failed in other places. He was a manager of the Mets. He was manager of the Cardinals. Obviously the Braves, he had a little success, made the playoffs. But he had, the back page, I was at the Daily News at the time when he got hired, and the back page was Clueless Joe.
Yeah.
More so like saying that Joe didn't know what he was getting himself into.
Right.
But Joe knew fully well what he was getting himself into, and he was able to handle that so well. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. Joe Girardi was certainly more high strung than Joe. Joe Torre was more laid back and kind of let everything kind of roll off his shoulders. But Joe Girardi was definitely more intense.
Yeah.
And I think Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner wanted that when they finally decided to replace Joe Torre. They wanted somebody more high strung. But usually in those cases, those kind of managers wear out their welcome at some point. I mean, Joe Girardi did last, 10 years with the team.
Yes. Yeah.
So back in the old days of when George Steinbrenner was hiring and firing Billy Martin 5 times.
Yeah.
Girardi might not have lasted as long as he did. They didn't even make the playoffs in his first season. There's Boone is. I would say Boone is definitely more like Torre than he is Girardi. But unlike those guys, Boone now is on the clock. Boone has to win a World Series at some point in the next several years. I mean, I don't know if they're, who knows what becomes of this season with the coronavirus outbreak. But Boone is on the clock because they have everything. They went out and they spent $324 million on Garrett Cole.
Yes, they did.
They have all these young players. So now it's up to Boone. I know they've won 100 games in each of his first couple of seasons, but now it's up to him to get to the World Series and win it.
Yeah, that's right. It's the old,
So what do you think about the plans or the proposed plans for the upcoming baseball season?
Look, I think they're really just kind of spitballing and throwing ideas out there right now. I think we're still a little bit of ways away from getting both sides to agree to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think they have to be smart with this. I think the no fans thing is a must right now in New York. I know it's not what people want to hear, but I think that's the way they have to start it out and see how it goes. I mean, I know they want to get the season going. They want the MLB and the owners want their TV money. They don't want to scrap the whole season.
Right.
I do believe that they want to do it for America. They want to have a product out there. They want to play. But again, they have to come to an agreement on some of these kind of smaller ideas of whether they're going to play in the home cities, whether they're going to quarantine the players in cities like Arizona or Florida. And then there's a lot of small things that you see coming out now about no high fives, no shaking hands. I mean, to me, that's not a huge deal, but it's going to make the game. It's going to make the game look very different, from what we're accustomed to seeing. And I think fans are going to have to be patient and understanding of that. I mean, I know there's a lot of kind of two sides of the fence here. Some people believe we should just open everything up full bore and get back to normal. But I think we kind of have to ease into it, especially in New York. I don't think we can just open it up and take a chance that this thing is going to explode again. Yeah. So I think the smartest thing for them to do is kind of ease into it. But I do believe that they have to have a plan in place that when the determination is made that they can restart, that they're ready to go.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So tell us a little bit about your new book, The Big 50, Big 50.
Yeah, it's a series of books by Triumph Books. That they've done with other teams. Obviously, when you do a 50 men in moments that made a team like the New York Yankees, the hardest part, the most challenging part was narrowing it down to 50. I think there are some teams in other sports and in baseball that you'd have to stretch it out really to legitimately get to 50 moments or characters in that franchise's history. But the Yankees obviously have won 27 World Series. They have countless Hall of Famers and great moments, perfect games, a perfect game in the World Series, Roger Maris's 61 home runs. So there's a lot of the hardest part was narrowing it down. I initially had made a list. I probably had over 100 names and moments on the list that I wanted to make its own chapter. But I at some point I decided, look, the only way to pare this down is to say put all Babe Ruth's moments into one chapter, put all of Jeter's moments into one chapter, combine some of the championship seasons. I couldn't do a separate chapter on each of the championship seasons. So, for instance, like 1943 to 1949 to 1953, they won 5 championships in a row. So I made that one chapter and kind of talked about those teams. In that chapter, was most of the same guys were on those teams. I think there was at least half the team was on the roster for all 5 of those championships. So I made that all one chapter. Yeah. And then I got into, you had the big ones, obviously Ruth and Gehrig are 1 and 2, and then I made George Steinbrenner number 3 ahead of DiMaggio and Mantle, only because I thought that George was such a huge figure in the franchise for almost 40 years, and I wanted to make the note of having him really high up, and especially otherwise the book is all, the beginning of the book is all based on the 1920s and 30s and 40s. So I wanted somebody recent in there, and then I have DiMaggio and Mantle after him, and then I get into Yogi and then Jeter and Mariano, and then I start getting into the moments like Larson's perfect game, Reggie's 3 homers in the 77 World Series, Maris's 61 and 61, and then we go from there. I will say the one fun kind of labor of love chapter that I told myself in the beginning I wanted to include was a chapter on the Yankees' involvement in the Seinfeld show and the George Costanza character in particular.
Yeah.
And when I set out to do it, I certainly wasn't expecting to speak to Larry David for it, but I ended up getting him on the phone for about an hour, and it was a lot of fun, kind of going through the machinations of him and Jerry Seinfeld having to kind of get approval from George Steinbrenner to use his name in the Yankee brand, and then really taking it to the millionth degree in terms of the character of Steinbrenner that they do on the show. And so I talked to George's family about it. I talked to Hal Steinbrenner about it. I found an old interview of George from the New York Times in the 90s where he said he didn't know much about the show, but his grandchildren were huge fans of the show, and they kind of convinced him to do it. He said that one of his grandchildren said to him that it was cooler that he was on Seinfeld than owning the Yankees.
Yeah, I'm sure of it.
So that was definitely a fun chapter. So I feel like I've covered in the book pretty much everything of the last century, from the trade of Babe Ruth to 1920 to this. The chapter 50 is the Baby Bombers. It's 2020, and it kind of looks ahead to where this young group needs to get to cement their place in Yankee history, which obviously there's so much of.
Nice.
So what would have been number 51 that was a hard decision to kind of, it's not going to fit in?
It's true. I get asked that a lot, and I tried to incorporate some of the names that I left out into chapters of certain World Series years and things like that. But there are some Hall of Famers that played for the Yankees that don't get their own chapters and really don't get a lot of mention in the book. Guys like, Earl Combs from those 20s teams, and Joe Gordon, and Johnny Mize from the 50s, and even somebody like Mike Mussina in the 2000s. These are Hall of Fame players, who had great careers with the Yankees, but there just wasn't enough. Players like Dave Winfield was another one. There's a lot of great players that, when it comes to the Yankees, I probably could have done 500 chapters easily if I wanted to, if I separated everything. So yeah, I mean, those are the kind of people that I wish I could have gotten to. Like, not to denigrate another team, but they sent me an example of the Big 50 book that was done about the Minnesota Twins a few years ago. And like, the person who's like number 30 for the Minnesota Twins wouldn't be in the top 500 for the Yankees. So that was probably the hardest part of it. And it's just the way it goes. And like I said, I tried to incorporate something about those players in the chapters of the eras that I was writing about.
Yeah.
So you get to tell a lot of stories within that, and of course the stories that you don't get to. Who's the one and I'm sure this is a question you've been asked a lot, but who's the one person you would have loved to interview in your career that you just would have never had the opportunity to because they were before your time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the middle range guys like DiMaggio and Mantle and Yogi obviously were around a lot at Old Timers days and whatever. So I mean, I would say the answer to that is Ruth. I mean, Ruth was the first kind of national sports star in this country. And there's obviously so much has been written about Babe Ruth that it was kind of hard to break any new ground there. But I was fascinated just by the personality of the guy. And, I have so many questions just about, his off-field life. I mean, that kind of stuff was really like taboo back in those days, even through the 60s, until Jim Bouton's Ball 4 book came out about the Mantle teams. You didn't talk about players' personal lives. There was no Page 6. There was no, stuff like that. There was no TMZ. So I think a player like Ruth would be the fascinating one. And obviously his teammate Lou Gehrig, for opposite reasons. Just one of the saddest, most poignant baseball stories ever. I would have loved to have gotten to, I had the opportunity to speak to him at some point.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, for sure. So in your book, Peter, I heard something about you have a little piece of one of our Yankee fans who's a famous actor from A Bronx Tale, our friend Chaz Palminteri. I heard he had a little blurb in there too. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah. Like I was saying, there's not a lot of people alive anymore that you can talk to who were teammates really with some of those older players, in the 50s, So I knew Chaz was a huge fan of Mickey Mantle's. He obviously had the scene in A Bronx Tale. where Sonny, the mob guy, tells him, Mickey Mantle doesn't care about you, why are you crying over it, whatever. So I wanted to talk to him about that. And then I got in a conversation I got him on the phone, and I had this long conversation with him, and he's just such a diehard Yankee fan to this day.
Yep.
To the point where like he says, my wife says I'm nuts. I want to be buried in a pinstripe coffin and things like that. But he told me some great stories. His dad was first generation Italian American. Became a Yankee fan because of DiMaggio. Right. Like a lot of people of that era. My dad was the same. My dad grew up in Brooklyn. He was a Dodger fan, but he was also he just revered DiMaggio. And I think a lot of first and second generation Italian Americans felt that way. Yeah. So that's how Chaz became a Yankee fan. And then his generation was, the mantle bearer, Maris years. But he stuck with them all the way through. And, he was telling me stories about going crazy on that Aaron Boone night against the Red Sox. And just even to this day, he can recite all the prospects in the system. He knows everything about the team. He also told me a fun story. When he used to come to the old stadium with his dad when he was a kid, they would sit way up in the upper deck in the nosebleed seats, kind of like the scene in A Bronx Tale where him and his dad are sitting at the fights and they're all the way up top, and the Sonny tries to get them to go down to the low, ringside. Right. Yeah. So he says, like, now that I can afford the seats right behind home plate below the moat, he says that he and his son now will walk up to the upper deck and find a father with his son or daughter and tell them about how he used to sit there when he was a kid, and even though it's a new stadium, and he'll give them an autographed baseball. He says he does that every time he goes to a game now in the Bronx.
That's really cool. Yeah, you know what? As all of our friends here say, I'm the fountain of useless information. I have some information about our friend Chaz that I don't think some of my friends know, but I don't think a lot of my friends know. My sister-in-law, married to my oldest brother, used to date Chaz back in the 70s, and I want to say late 70s, maybe mid to late 70s, and they sang in a wedding band together up in the Bronx. Chaz was a singer. The name of the band was Razzmatazz. And Chaz and my sister-in-law Jeannie were an item for quite a while. And then I don't know what happened. I guess my good-looking brother got in the way, and and now she's married to my brother. But yeah, so there's an interesting tidbit. And I've been to his restaurant twice. Both times I wanted to just kind of say, "Hey, Chaz, my name's Joe Calandrillo. Let's sit down and talk about the Yankees." He's never there. He's never there. So maybe one of these days I'll catch him. I don't know.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, he's still a working actor. He was just on, he used to have guest spots recently on Modern Family. I know maybe some younger fans remember him from that. And he's got his one-man play, although it's obviously been shut down right now, but he has that he's doing that as well. But yeah, I mean, he was a great guy, and he's a huge Yankee fan. And I'm really happy that he agreed to write the forward. He and Bernie Williams wrote the forwards for the book. And I really feel like it adds a lot to the book to have their voices in it.
That's really cool. He seems like a regular guy you want to just sit down and have a drink with, Yeah. So, Joe has a nice question there. Naz, you want to ask the Joe Laverty question?
So what sports writer or editor influenced your career the most?
And you can't say Joe Laverty.
So I guess I can't. So Joe's watching. I can't say Joe. Joe was one of my first editors at the Post when I got hired there in 1990. And he was a great editor and still a great friend to this day. My first editor at the New York Post, his name was Bob Decker. He hired me, took a chance on me. I got hired initially to be what's called an AGA clerk. Like the pages that have the standings and the box scores and all the stats. That was my job. I would answer phones and take high school scores. So Bob was one of the first people that gave me the chance. His successor, after we had went on strike at the Post in the early 90s, his successor was Greg Gallo. He gave me my first full-time writing gig covering. First, I was covering high schools. I covered like Felipe Lopez and Stephon Marbury when they were playing in New York high schools. And then I got promoted to the Islander beat in 1994. And Greg Gallo gave me that chance. So I owe him a great debt of gratitude. From the writer side, I mean, I will say that a lot of people don't know this, but I grew up in the same town as Frank Isola. I don't know if you know him. He covered the Knicks for years for the Daily News, and now is at ESPN, wrote for The Athletic for a while. So we grew up in the same town. I was the same age as his brother. grew up playing soccer together, and Frank actually got me my interview at the Post in 1990 when I first got out of college. I've known him forever. And then when he went to the Daily News in like 94, a few years after that, he also helped get me hired at the Daily News in 97. And then I was there for 20 years. So believe me, Frank reminds me of it every day. And I would definitely have to give him the shout out as the writer that probably had the most influence on my career.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
So outside of the book and the stories that you get to tell within that, what would you say was your favorite story to write that told a great story, whether it was it may not even have to be of an athlete, of just something that happened in our history that you penned that you'd say was your most memorable?
I mean, there were some cool ones. I've covered 6 no-hitters, 2 perfect games. I covered Roy Halladay's no-hitter in the playoffs for the Phillies against the Reds. But there were ones like there were some nights and games to be at that were just so much fun. I mean, there was a brawl 2 days after David Wells' perfect game in 1998 in which Tino Martinez got drilled in the back by Armando Benitez. It was one of the craziest fights I've ever been a part of, and guys were still seething after the game. I remember that very vividly. The other one that really stands out to me, even though they lost this World Series, was the 2001 World Series, Games 4 and Game 5 of that series. The home runs by Tino and Brocious in the 9th inning to tie those 2 games against the Diamondbacks. Never felt anything like that at the stadium. It was obviously barely a month after 9/11. We had President Bush threw out the first pitch before the first home game of that series. And it was just such a different feeling that entire fall, that entire October. And those 2 nights were different than any other nights I ever experienced at the stadium. It literally felt like the stadium was going to fall down on those, in the 9th inning of those 2 games. Obviously, Jeter won the first night with a walk-off home run, Mr. November.
Mr. November.
I would say those 2 nights, because of their historical impact, even though, like I said, even though the Yankees didn't go on to win that World Series, they lost in Game 7 in Arizona. Those 2 nights stand out to me the most. Several players that I talked to for the book actually said that that's the most memorable World Series for them, even though they lost. I mean, I know, fans probably want to hear them talking about 98 and 99 and 2000 against the Mets. But that 2001 World Series and everything leading up to it, them visiting firehouses and the shutdown for a couple of weeks, it meant so much to all of them that I think a lot of them still view that as the most memorable World Series for them. And for me, that's definitely right up there in terms of my memories of things that I covered.
Yeah, I think people forget that ball players they're people too. So there are so many emotions tied into it besides just win or loss. I mean, I remember I was at the game where Mike Piazza hit the home run.
Oh, God.
And it was like you said, it felt like the stadium was going to collapse. Because it was a collective, everybody was in the same place at the same time. And the players, I mean, it really is a different moment that you can't. And not to take anything away from
of course,
winning a World Series, but just that
the emotion,
connection, and that emotion. That's
an interesting tidbit. There,
here we go. I have an interesting tidbit for you.
Okay. He hit that home run off a New Yorker, Piazza. He hit it off a Carsey. The New Yorker, So That's
interesting.
So just more useless information that I seem to be full of these last couple of weeks.
Right, like I remember speaking to Chipper Jones years later, and I know he was kind of vilified by Met fans, but I mean I feel like they should really appreciate the career that he had and the fact that he embraced being the villain. Against the Mets. But he was in left field that night and watched that ball go out, and he said that he actually thought that was the right ending to that game. That as much as the Braves wanted to win, they knew that they were kind of the secondary figures of that moment. And he said that was the Piazza home run gave him chills, and he said that he's always maintained that was the right ending to that night.
That was. I mean, I'm not a Mets fan, but even I was like, wow, that was so cool. It really was, just for the whole New York thing and the 9/11, and that was a terrific moment. It was. Peter, what's your take on the stadium from 1976 until 2008? And what's your take on the current stadium? Me personally, I like the older stadium better. To me, that's where the ghosts were and just more of a feel, you know?
Right. Mystique and aura, like Kurt Schilling said back in the day, right? So, yeah, I mean, the old Yankee Stadium had certainly the character and the history that you want, and the new stadium obviously only has the one World Series so far. But I feel like the atmosphere has definitely changed since they went across the street. I feel like they haven't been able to replicate that. A lot of that is the fact that they haven't had the success that they did in the old stadium.
Right.
But definitely, you mentioned the ghosts, and there were the monuments. I know they moved them across the street, but it doesn't feel the same. The new one just seems more antiseptic and kind of this monolithic structure, whereas the Yankee Stadium seemed to have its own personality and persona that fans adored, and players noted there was definitely a difference in the old stadium. You could just feel it on certain nights, and a lot of it was because maybe, like we're talking about, how it felt like the stadium was going to fall down. I mean, structurally there were some flaws to it, right, and so I definitely feel like all the winning that was done there definitely added to the mystique of the place, and and the fact that people were complaining about the Bronx and different things, and there were stretches where people weren't going to the stadium. I mean, you look at when Roger Maris hit the home run in '61, the bleachers are empty.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there were times where people didn't want to go to the Bronx or whatever, but the Yankees in the '90s kind of brought that back, and that era of Yankee baseball, I feel like, shouldn't get short shrift when it gets compared to the 20s and the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, because to me, those Yankees teams of the '90s having to win 3 playoff rounds every year, they should get far more credit than they did, because I don't think you're going to see a team win 4 out of 5 again. You haven't even seen a team repeat in a long time. So, and people forget that they could have won 5 out of 6 if not for, as we talked about before, the Game 7 with Mariano of all people on the hill to lose that game to the Diamondbacks. I mean, they could have won 5 in 6 years, which just is an amazing feat when you think about it. Those teams should get all the credit, as much credit as any team in Yankee history, in my opinion.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, Mo handled that like a pro too. When the game ended, he sat by his locker. I remember he was like, "Listen, I threw the pitch. It's on me," because there was some talk about, well, the infield was in, and if Jeter was playing back at regular depth, he said, "Listen," he said, "I'm the guy that had the ball in my hand. Credit them." He said, I made a good pitch. Gonzalez hit a tough pitch, and credit to them. He said, listen, it was their day. So
yeah, I mean, it was a broken bat single that barely got over the joint infield, right? So if Jeter was playing 2 steps back, he probably catches that ball.
Yeah.
And who knows what happens from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mariano was always such a stand-up guy, and I was very happy to see, as much as I still would love to know the one person who didn't vote for Jeter for the Hall of Fame. I was very happy to see that Mariano got unanimous, because I think it was well deserved.
Yes.
He's the greatest to ever do that job. I know, people like Goose Gossage disagree about the definition of the job and things like that, from when he was pitching. But Mariano, to me, is the best to ever do it. And if anybody was going to get the first perfect score, it should have been him. I mean, obviously there were guys before him that should have got it. It's a ridiculous notion that some players before Mariano didn't get 100% of the vote. Even a couple of years before that, like Griffey and Greg Maddux and people like that. It's just shocking.
Yeah.
But Mariano certainly was deserving of it, and I'm glad that he got it.
Yeah, for sure.
Including, and it's funny because there was the big debate. There was the one writer who was very vocal about, it shouldn't be unanimous. But then he, in the end, flipped the vote.
Yeah.
Flipped his vote. And so it's got its own history.
Yeah.
And to your point, to think that's the first time that happens is a little crazy.
Think about the names.
Yeah. And even moving forward, there's always going to be somebody in that position. But I think it goes back to, I think his argument, right, was the definition of the closer and the job that they did and why but it eventually flipped his vote.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the Yankees don't win those World Series, in my opinion, without Mariano. He's the most indispensable player on those World Series teams.
Absolutely.
Not to take anything away from any of the other guys, but Mariano was the difference maker in those series.
Oh, yeah.
You could make the case that he could have been the MVP of every one of those World Series that he pitched in. So to me, he's the difference maker, and he was the right guy, I think, to get the 100% of the vote. And I don't know if we're going to see another one maybe until like Mike Trout shows up. Like I don't think there's going to be another one because there's a lot of guys that are different, issues with PEDs, whatever your feeling is on that. So, like somebody like A-Rod certainly not getting. I don't think he's even getting in. If you based on Bonds and Clemens not getting in so far. So I feel like maybe the next guy will be Mike Trout, maybe Pujols, somebody like that. But the fact that Jeter didn't get in leads me to believe that there might be somebody who leaves those guys off as well. So, Mariano, it shouldn't be an insult to Derek Jeter, right? To be second all time to his close friend and teammate Mariano in the voting. But I feel like if you're going to not vote for Derek Jeter for the Hall of Fame, you should come out and explain why. You shouldn't be able to hide behind anonymity in that situation.
I agree.
I've said all along that I feel like, look, we're very honored to vote and be included in the process, but you should be ready and willing and to explain why you're a yes or a no on any person on your ballot. And if you're going to be the only person to not vote for Derek Jeter, you should come out and say why.
Yeah, that's a great point. I agree.
And the thing about Mariano is even when he wasn't in the game, there was always the threat of Mariano, like a power hitter.
Right.
It was, you're always worried about the cleanup hitter. Well, it was always like, well, Mariano is going to pitch, and then let's get our runs in because once he's in, we're not going to score. So it was even the threat of him that I felt was
absolutely.
imposing.
Absolutely, he can get up at any time. That bullpen phone rang.
Yeah,
and he's taking a jacket off and he's warming up, and then it's like good night.
One of my favorite songs.
Yep.
At
the Sandman.
Terry Francona told me a funny story for the bookies. He said, he goes, every time I heard that frickin' song, I knew we were dead. and then the Red Sox actually came back twice on him in the playoffs.
Yes.
In 2004. So they're one of the teams that actually had some October success against him. But I thought it was funny that Francona had such respect for Mariano, and he had said similar things about Jeter. Like, it's good to see between such an intense rivalry that there was also such respect between those teams.
Yeah, it's true. It's amazing. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in that 2004, Peter, if you really think about it, the Yankees were a few outs away from sweeping that series.
Yep.
Right, and a stolen base by Dave Roberts
changed everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Turned that entire series around. And as a Yankee fan, I'm going to say, and if my Yankee fan friends out there get a little mad at me, I'm sorry. But that night when Game 7 started, I said, there's no way the Yankees are winning this game. And I never give up on a game, but you're running guys like Javi Vasquez and Kevin Brown out there. I mean, I know that's who they had, and that's who they had to pitch. But, I mean, talk about you were up 3-0 and a few outs away from sweeping that series. And the Red Sox come charging back from Big Papi and Roberts and Millar. And I was like, oh my God, there's no way they're winning this game tonight. I just had a bad feeling.
And I was up there at Fenway for those games, and they won Game 3, 19-8.
Yes.
And then the next night got rained out.
Yes.
So it gave the Red Sox kind of 2 days to recover, and then they fell behind in Game 4, and then as you mentioned, the Roberts stolen base kind of altered history there, and then Schilling pitches that Game 6 in New York. It felt kind of fait accompli. You knew that I felt like the Yankees were going to lose that Game 7, right? Damon hits a grand slam into the seats in right, and off the Red Sox go. And I went to school in Boston, and I have a lot of friends from there. So I say to them all the time, I said, can you believe that they've won as many World Series now as they have after these 86 years of suffering? I know Red Sox fans actually, some of them that I know are miss the fact that they were able to complain all the time and able to commiserate in that sort of misery. But I mean, they've done a phenomenal job. It's hard to believe that they've won the World Series 4 times, and since then.
Yeah.
Like I said, I went to school up there and have a lot of friends, and I'm happy for them. It's not something that. I'm not huge into the New York-Boston rivalry. Like I said earlier, I grew up a Met fan, so I don't kind of have the hatred. The Mets. My freshman year of college was '86. To be in Boston, in the dorms in Boston, at BU, surrounded by Boston people, when the ball went through Buckner's legs, was an amazing night. And,
it was.
I mean that series was amazing. My son was 12 years old and was at the game with his mom. Game 7, and I said to him, I said, look, I said, as many of the World Series games that you've been to, he got to go to a lot of games. I got to buy tickets, through the team. I said that this one is history. Like this one, the fact that they came back from 3-0 and beat the Yankees, like even if it's a negative memory, you're never going to forget being at this game. Right. And the fact that they went on to end the curse of the Bambino a couple of weeks later. So yeah, I mean, that obviously wasn't one of the 50 greatest moments in Yankee history, though.
No. That's probably the top worst moment.
That won't be on Yankee Classics.
That won't be on Yankee Classics. No, for sure it won't be. No. So Peter, what's your there's a question here from our friend John Wilders down in Florida.
Who's playing golf right now?
Yeah, John had to rub it in. Thanks, John, with the golf. Thanks. So what's your take on two of our favorite guys to ever play first base here in this city, Keith Hernandez and Donnie Baseball? Should those guys be in the Hall of Fame, in your opinion?
I'm kind of conflicted on it. Hernandez was off the ballot before I started voting.
Okay.
Mattingly was on for a few years towards in my first few years on as a voting member, and I did not vote for him. I always felt like his peak, his amount of great seasons was just too short. Look, he was the best hitter in baseball for 4 or 5 years in the mid '80s. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
But I just felt like, and it stinks that the back injuries kind of zapped his power and took away from his greatness. But I just felt like he fell short in the overall numbers. But as I think about it more now, and I think he has a shot on the Veterans Committee. I think there are players who appreciate the what he brought on both sides of the ball, and I think Hernandez is the same. There was not a better defensive first baseman in my lifetime than Keith Hernandez. I couldn't imagine anyone before him being better.
Right.
And he was a perennial 300 hitter. He was a clutch hitter. I think he led the league in game-winning RBIs a few times in the 80s. So I mean, I think you can make a case for both of those guys. The funny thing is, like, I vote. I've kind of changed my voting the last couple of years. I've kind of leaned towards guys maybe who don't have great offensive numbers, but were great defensively. I started voting last year for both Omar Vizquel and for Andrew Jones, who I felt were the two best players at their positions in my lifetime defensively. And so I vote for those. I think maybe now, if they were on the ballot, I would strongly consider Hernandez and Mattingly for that reason. I think they both have a shot on the Veterans Committee. They put in Ted Simmons this year. I think another guy who was overlooked for a great hitting career that he had as a catcher. Was overshadowed by guys like Johnny Bench and even Gary Carter. But yeah, I do. I think that Hernandez and Mattingly now have a shot, and I think I would reconsider them strongly now if they were on the ballot again, because of kind of shift in my own voting. One other guy that I think should get put in by the Veterans Committee, I'm surprised he didn't do better last year, was Thurman Munson. Look, I wasn't a Yankee fan growing up, but I always respected Munson just because of how hard he played. My dad would say to me, watch this guy, how hard-nosed he is, how he stays in there and takes a hit from a runner coming in, and his throwing ability, clutch hits, everything. Like, for me, his life being shortened by a tragic event shouldn't take away from the fact that, for me, he was a better all-around player than Carlton Fisk, who was in the Hall of Fame, a contemporary of his.
I agree.
So my feeling is Munson should be in the Hall of Fame, and I really hope the Veterans Committee corrects that at some point in the coming years.
I hope so too, Pete. That's a great point, because I think Fisk is in because he had a great career. But look
he had the longevity, right?
Right, exactly right. Yeah, so yeah, Thurman should be in for sure. But the Veterans Committee now is a nice thing. Maybe in due time they do get in. I think it'd be nice. Yep, it would be.
Everybody should get their proper due.
Yes,
certainly. If it's at least review it.
Right.
At least give them the opportunity to say, "Hey, here's a shot to get that proper recognition."
Absolutely.
And I mean, everybody thinks they belong in the Hall of Fame, right? I think everybody believes they're deserving of it. But this is the pinnacle of your career, and so yeah, not everybody is worthy. But when you look back, hey, wait a second.
Yeah.
And you can't Monday night quarterback the decisions that were made.
Right.
But you have to have respect for it.
Yeah.
Which is why I like the Veterans Committee thing.
Right.
To your point,
for sure.
It gives you another opportunity to say, hey, wait a second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
My one issue with the Veterans Committee, I will say, is there's kind of sometimes some cronyism going on. Like, they put their friends in. Like, I was not a big fan of Harold Baines getting in the Hall of Fame. I know he had a fine career, but he never. To me, he was never a Hall of Fame player. And the Veterans Committee was led by a couple of his former managers and teammates, and that's how he got in. I felt like there were people a lot of people far more deserving on that Veterans Committee ballot than him, who should have gotten him in ahead of him. I feel like if you let him in, it kind of opens the door. And we talk about the Hall of Fame being kind of watered down to the Hall of Very Good. You see that even like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame gets kind of watered down as they let in just so many bands and acts. That it kind of loses some of the prestige when you take away from it, when you put in players that are maybe a notch below some of these all-time greats.
Yeah. Hey, well said. Again, it's just always going to be that. Is always going to be someone.
Yeah.
The pebble in the shoe.
The pebble in the shoe. The pebble in the shoe. Yep, that's true.
Peter, we really appreciate you taking the time with us today. Hey, and I do want you to share your book is available. Where's the best outlet for folks to pick up the book?
Well, I mean, the hardest thing is when you write a book is to not be able to see it on the shelves in the bookstores, right? Not be able to see it in bookstores. But yeah, it's available anywhere online that you can buy books. It's available at Amazon. It's available at barnesandnoble.com. Target.com is selling it. My publisher, Triumph Books, is selling it directly at their website. Any independent bookstores that are trying to kind of stay afloat, maybe you could call them and they could get a copy for you, bring it outside to you, even if you're not allowed in the store. So there's definitely ways to get it. But all the major websites have been selling it now for a while. It's been out since April 14th. So I really appreciate you guys having me on and being able to talk for a few minutes.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. It was great.
That was great to talk to you, Peter.
Thank you. And you know what? I am a baseball fan, so and I look forward to. And I've read some snippets from what I've read online. I'm really intrigued, and I love the history of the game. And regardless, and it's our city, so regardless of what you believe, and I do. I say it all the time. I do believe the Yankees and the Steinbrenner changed the face of baseball through many different ways of operations, and and too many people, argue the other side. Oh, they killed baseball. You know what? No. I don't think so. And I think you could. And I think
it was changed.
Definitely.
Certainly changed the game.
Ideas. He wanted to win, and he was going to do what he could to win.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did.
So it's sitting in my cart. Bookshop.org is the other website we've been checking out that helps the independent bookshop. So
it's going to be a Father's Day.
Peter, really, thank you so much again. And stay healthy.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Great talking to you, Peter. Thank you. I could talk to you for another hour about the Yankees.
Well, you guys have my numbers. If you have any questions, just shoot them over.
You guys
stay safe and be healthy. Like I said, I hope the book maybe can fill some of the void while we're all kind of waiting for baseball to come back.
Amen. Amen.
Without a doubt.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank
we'll
you,
talk to you
Peter.
soon.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye. Yep. Wow, that was cool. We could go to like 5 o'clock. I could keep talking to him about the Yankees. And I said a little hockey. Yep.
Something a little to share with you.
Little tidbit.
Oh, wait, so now Naz has useless information.
Well, it's not useless.
Okay.
But Matt Gonzalez, the Curtis bowling coach, was Sparky, the Islander mascot.
Is that right?
From about 2001 to about 2006.
Are you kidding? He was Sparky. Wow. You know what? That's interesting.
Think about his personality. You know him, Matt Gonzalez, like Curtis Girls bowling.
Yeah.
He's kind of got that.
I'll tell you what, he's a damn good skater because he used to charge onto the ice in that outfit, the whole dragon thing or whatever, and skate across with the Islander flag. I'm like, this guy's pretty good. Yeah, well, that's interesting. That's very nice.
The first time he shared that,
very nice.
And she didn't. She goes, "You have to tell Frankie this." I just looked
I
at him.
didn't think coming from me anybody was going to believe it.
Right.
I got a couple of friends that one of our bowling proprietors in Indiana. He did that for a period of time in college, and it's just. Really? Again, but I will tell you, any costume you put on a costume,
you're a different person.
Oh,
yeah.
And the best part is you even smile under the costume.
Exactly.
Yeah. Remember Danny Harris that used to bowl here? Remember Danny Harris? When the Nets were in Jersey, before they came to Brooklyn years ago, like maybe late 80s, early 90s, He was the mascot, and I'm trying to remember what the mascot. For
it was.
But it was Danny Harris. He was
oh my God.
He was the mascot.
Right there, the Nets.
Yeah,
and he's still with them, right?
It was
no, he's with a
was it
private.
Duncan?
He's with a theater now.
Duncan. It was Duncan.
There you go.
Whoa. He was the mascot. Yes.
And one of our former junior bowlers, Amanda Colangelo, was one of the first scooters.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, we got a lot of mascot. A lot of mascot information.
Oh, right. They had the Scootette. I don't know. Huckin.
Yes.
Finn?
That's right.
That's
Matt Colangelo's sister.
Finn.
Matt Colangelo's sister. That's right. Yeah, I know the Colangelos. Absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
Joe could write Joe could definitely write books.
We're gonna have Joe start making notes.
Yeah, little notes
to make to kind of compile them into
my own
something.
And we might have to Joe Laverty, if he's still out there. We might need you to help Joe pen. His
my own
book.
top 50.
I think that's probably not a bad
maybe
idea.
something to do in my golden years once I retire from ABC. Play a little golf. If the courses ever open up, then after golf, go home, have a bourbon, make my little notes, pen my.
Once you start writing stuff down, you realize. I mean, you say it about yourself all the time that you're a wealth of useless information. But you know what? That's stories that people like to hear.
Yeah.
So once you start writing it,
it
could just flow right out.
Yeah. So I could have talked to him, like I said, till dinner time tonight. He was mentioning
Joe Laverty Jr. says he's going to help you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I look forward to that as soon as I retire.
Kevin's obviously watching some golf right now.
Good to see those. Yeah, as soon as
they're carrying their own stuff.
No caddies allowed. And you know what? As soon as I leave here, Kevin, I got my TV is on the Golf Channel already. So when I put it on, it's boom, right on the Golf Channel. Yep. It's on till 6, so I got plenty of time.
And you know what? We missed an opportunity because we were chatting, but at 2:00 we were on time today.
Yeah, right.
We were on at 2:00 today. Check it out. It's and we're almost over. But
Michelle says I can go play golf with John Wilders. John, I'm on the next flight. I'm coming down.
The only problem is the flight down there. I probably wouldn't fly anywhere.
Yeah.
If I was going to go anywhere, I would go someplace I could drive to.
Yeah, we played the other day in Jersey.
You played what?
We played in Jersey the other day.
Oh, that's right.
We played at Pebble Creek. It was,
I know. Some of the Sean Hicks guys.
Yeah, that's what we did. The Sean Hicks guys went, and it's not. I would rather stay on the island, but
DJ forgot to carry his bag.
See, they're spoiled. They usually have.
You know what? I have to say that when we play, sometimes that I carry my bag, and that's happened to me.
Yeah.
The only problem is when you carry backwards, the clubs.
The clubs fall out. Yeah,
he hasn't figured that out yet, obviously.
And his brother is his caddy. Johnson's brother is his caddy, so he definitely misses his brother. Oh yeah,
I'm looking forward to.
He misses his brother. Yeah, they got to carry their own clubs. They should have Kevin Rourke's electric cart. Push the button and the cart just goes for you with the clubs.
That's what they need. One of those. I never quite trusted it.
Michelle said she'll drive you.
All right.
I actually don't have. Anthony and I were talking about this morning. I don't have a problem flying. I flew right before this.
Yeah.
And it was the best experience ever. I wish people were afraid of flying more often.
Yeah, I'm sure of it.
But you know what?
I just don't like seeing the crowded.
They were not crowded. They were clean. People. It's just a different atmosphere.
Agreed.
Agreed. And sadly for the airline industry, who's going to struggle for a while.
This is going to be the repercussions I feel from this period that they're going through.
Oh, it's going to be long term.
It's going to be. I believe that it's going to be very cost prohibitive to fly.
The only positive is that if they buy, because the way that they purchase gas, they purchase gas so far in advance. So by the time,
maybe it'll trickle forward.
Well, it usually does. If you ever when you have those low gas periods, cheap gas periods, you wind up getting you have that 6 months to a year residual. So there are some things that are going to help. But to your point, it's going to be probably a little bit more expensive in the next 6 to 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to less flights available. It'll be interesting to watch. I mean, just like everything else.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, yes,
it's going to be change. My vacation was planned right before this. I was leaving for vacation on March 24th, I believe. And it was going to be my first vacation in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So
we'll get there, Ness. It's going to happen.
Eventually.
It's going to happen. I'm looking forward to it, too.
Yep. That's right.
So Brian wasn't with us yesterday. He watched later on and wants you to know, Joe.
They're out, right? See if they're out. There's no knives in my back, right? They're out. Okay. All right, good. Thanks, Brian. Thanks. I told you it was all in good fun. It was all in good fun. I was only teasing.
So
That's okay.
I don't have an old Rabs photo for today, but I have an old photo. I mentioned it yesterday that I wanted to share. So yesterday we were talking about dressing, when people were getting dressed in an era to go out and just
ties at a ball game.
This is a little different.
Okay.
This fits the bill. So this is from 1961.
Oh, you pulled out one of the ones in the box.
Yeah, this is at Bowling on the Green.
Wow.
Well, those are actually costumes.
Right. These are costumes. So this here, Peggy Garbarino, Di Capitelli, Whitey Wass on the bottom right.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow.
They were celebrating the first century of Staten Island.
Wow.
So 1961, they had launched January 1.
Wow.
They launched this year-long campaign. And one of the things was they marched down Newdorp Lane in these pilgrim outfits.
In those outfits?
Yeah. Wow. And then they had a bowling event.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
And I've had these photos for a while, and we've been sharing them, and I didn't know what all of them were.
We weren't sure what this photo was, and we were showing them. You know,
what's the deal?
Story behind this?
And it took us a while.
Knew the whole story.
Was
it Mary?
It was Mary. So it took us a while to get the story. So I showed Joe Labargo because there are photos of my dad, my uncle, Dom, and this other group of people, and then this event. And I have a bunch of them, and we couldn't tell. But Mary Firmino goes, "Oh, you know that was."
She knew the whole story.
And I looked at her and said, "You're the first person to tell me that."
Yeah.
These are Pat Bennett photos. We've got a bunch of them. The Advance was purging photos as they're going digital. And if Joe DeModio is still watching, I tell you all that I've reminded you before, but you could keep sending those photos as you pull them out and you digitize them. We'd love to have them and save them. I got a whole
That's really cool.
Yeah. These are my dad's photos. He had copies made. Up in the corner, Sunday, October 15th, the Sheriff's Posse Arena. Some sort of cowboy gun show.
Wow.
Yeah. Jeez. I thought that's pretty cool.
That's before the bridge too. Wow, that's really cool.
So some point in 1961, celebrating the 300th anniversary of Staten Island.
Wow, like Thanksgiving, with all the pilgrim outfits.
Yeah, and it wasn't even Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
that's the funny part. It was a different time frame. There's in the historic Richmond town. So now when you start digging, you find the program for the year's events.
Oh wow.
And then they had all these crazy
I can imagine. Yeah.
And this was
I can imagine. One of them. That's pretty cool. In Brooklyn, we just had the feast on 18th Avenue. That's it. Got some Zapolas, some sausage and peppers. Yeah, whatever. Peroni beer when I was old enough to drink, although 18 was the legal drinking age then. So, before it changed again. But that was really fun. And Bobby Mirabella in the thread there, he kept talking about in that Game 7 against Arizona that the ball got thrown into center field.
Right.
Rivera, it was a bunt.
Right.
And he threw, and he never made an excuse. He took it like a man. He answered all of the questions. But he was on another show like later on, I think before the next season started.
Blame Jeter?
No, he didn't blame Jeter. No, he didn't blame Jeter. Those core four guys always stuck together. But what he did say, and he said, he was talking to Michael Kay, and he said, Michael, not to make an excuse, it never rains in Arizona. Never. And the roof was open that night because that's a retractable dome. He said, when Arizona came to bat in the bottom of that inning, it started drizzling. He said, and when I turned around to throw that ball, I lost my grip on it because the ball was wet. And he said, I threw the pitch again. Gonzalez got the hit, credit to him. It was their day, but it never rains in the desert. Never rains in Arizona. Started drizzling, and he lost his grip on the ball. And he wouldn't say it that night after the game. He waited till months later.
I mean, in the moment, right? In the moment,
Well, he did the right thing. He took, you take responsibility for your actions.
That's more.
Listen, that's one of the things that I think makes him
an
exceptional. He's an exceptional person.
Yeah, he is.
He's a good baseball player. But from what
great human being,
right?
Yep.
He is a good person.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
That's what you do. You take responsibility.
Yep.
Own
it.
I screwed up.
Own it. Yep.
Correct.
Own it. Another theme for the show. Own it.
Own it.
Say something. Own it.
Own it. And we also keep it real.
Keep it real. There you go.
If we didn't keep it real, we own it all the time.
We own those mistakes.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Ronnie, Hawaii up in flames. I was supposed to go to Hawaii in June too.
Yeah, talk about golf. Wow, that would
be
for
convention.
I would love to golf there.
I've got a little sour. Vegas.
Yeah.
The whole, I'm just like, oh, we'll get to travel soon. And I don't get to do vacation very often. And those are trips. An unfortunate error. Yeah, that certainly is true, Rob.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
So what do we got coming up?
Tommy Wilkinson is apparently watching golf too.
I'm on my way to watch.
I'm looking forward to I don't think Tommy's at home. I'm just gonna go watch some golf with him. Own it, yes.
And Kenny did.
Oh,
he owned it.
Yes, and good point, Kenny. We really kept it real yesterday.
Yes,
Kenny.
Yeah, like the Charge of the Light Brigade.
We called him out for sending sake to Joe, and we were just making fun, just having a good time, and within minutes, I felt like minutes. Kenny Soto was walking through the door to pick up pizza and dropped off sake live on the set, which I got to enjoy last night. I had my sushi fix last night. I was excited. Even more excited that my friend Jenny said a pint of hot sake with the order. So I had to drink that first.
Of course.
And then, of course, I hit the cold sake.
There you go.
Right. So I have to say Now, we talked about that, the whole food thing, when you get to order and have something you haven't had.
Yeah.
That was like the best sushi meal ever.
It's like extra special because you haven't had it in a while.
And it wasn't the same because I usually go there, sit at the sushi bar, and I can talk to everybody. And I mean, they drink probably more than I do. And I sat there and I was like, oh.
That's great. So yeah, we enjoyed it Friday. Friday night, it was good. If you ever order from there, they're good. Food.
Yeah, we usually go to Nakata, but your place is a little
They're
closer.
very good.
I might try it.
They're very good. And if you're in the mood for you want to pick something up after that, you go to Bono's right next door, get some pastries.
Oh.
Yeah, so,
I like the schfoidels.
Oh, the schfoidels.
They make good schfoidels.
Yes, they do.
See, so we talked with Peter today, and we talked a lot about the Yankees. And I have to say, I am looking forward to picking up that book.
It's going to be a Father's Day gift.
And the whole Seinfeld thing, it's so true.
Yeah.
And the whole shadow,
right. You don't actor, see him,
trying to duplicate Steinbrenner's voice. And
you know whose voice
George
that was,
Costanza was. It wasn't Larry David's voice.
It was Larry David.
Larry David did the voice of Steinbrenner.
That unmistakable voice.
And then Jason Alexander, and there are some great clips that he just can't keep it. If you go back and you watch some like the bloopers, in all of those scenes, because he had this, the great job that he had, and then he just, he did everything wrong in that job.
No, the traveling secretary. Come on,
the
traveling secretary. Come on.
But it's cool to see that history lives in the book there. So that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Anyway, so tomorrow, Naz, we're going to continue the Yankee conversation with our own Staten Island Yankees leadership team. So Will Smith.
The Will Smith.
Will Smith will be here tomorrow, and TJ. We'll find out what's going on for the upcoming
New York Penn League
season and what's happening in the league, the shakeups. And, they're excited. They've been making some changes in the last several years with their management team and the ownership. And so I have to say, my last experience at the ballpark was awesome. They've done some great work there.
They do a good job there. Yeah.
Just need more people to go and enjoy it. So tomorrow they'll be here. Tuesday, Naz. Our very own borough president.
Jimmy Otto will be here on the show. Jimmy and his beard.
Yeah. Very nice.
Or is it the beard and Jimmy Otto?
It's definitely two identities because that is all on its own.
We'll have our weekly check-in with Pam Silvestri. We'll talk food on Thursday. Pro Bowler Saturday. Joe Cal is back in the studio with the very
McKendry, the McKendry coach.
I almost did what guys with the
see? It's easy.
Shannon O'Keefe. Well, it's funny because you said Stephanie, and I mean they have their own thing together. They travel out. They're good friends. They do a little Facebook. They've got their own videos. The Stephanie show. But Shannon will be here on Saturday, so we're looking forward to another great week here on Live from Rabs.
Sunday, I don't know if you want to go into Sunday.
Next Sunday.
Mike Pellegrino.
Oh, boy.
Slots will be here.
So Wendy McPherson will be calling in.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm sure if you know Mike Pellegrino, you have a Mike Pellegrino story. So tell your friends and please join us that day. Mike would love to see and hear from everybody. And we're going to go take a trip down memory lane with Mike.
Nice.
And then he's all, I really want him to talk about his experience in Vegas, and operating the bowling center there, because it really, I said it yesterday, it's a total different environment,
different animals.
and they're very league based businesses, but spinner. We're looking forward to next Sunday.
Michelle was asking if I you know what, I would love to be here tomorrow, Michelle, but I got to go back to work. I mean, working from home, but I have to work.
And we can't pay him enough to cover that. So.
I did call in last week though, on Monday.
So tonight on ABC,
yes, American Idol finale. I hope everybody's watching.
So be sure
vote number 17.
Yep, tune in and vote 17. Our very own hometown girl, Julia Gargano.
Yep.
You know what? And you said it yesterday too. A lot of them do, even if they don't win, they still do great. And she's
great careers.
She really is. Her writing is great too. So.
Definitely.
She's very, very talented.
So after golf, you got a little break. American Idol at 8 o'clock. It should be a nice Sunday.
And then the last dance.
You started off with us today.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful
day.
It is.
And then after Idol, the last 2 parts of the last dance on ESPN, Chicago Bulls, that whole story.
That's cool.
It wraps up tonight. And that should be good.
Joe is paid with Jello shots. He could be. I mean, if Joe wants Jello shots, we've got him. Well,
We're having an off-camera conversation. It's okay.
That's all right.
It's okay.
Hey,
it's a production conversation.
We really appreciate you tuning in with us. We are going to continue to be here until further notice.
UFN.
2 o'clock, live on Facebook and YouTube. Continue to like and share our videos. You guys are awesome. We love you. We miss you. We can't wait to have you back here inside the studio that we know as Rabs Country Lanes.
That's it.
Back to bowling. It's going to happen soon. Before you know it, this will all be a really bad dream.
Just a memory.
Yep.
Yes.
A weird and scary memory.
Yeah, a surreal memory.
Joe is advertising all for ABC. He's making sure he sends these clips to his boss to make sure that he shows that he's working.
They don't even know I'm on here. Could be a conflict of interest.
They own you, right?
The House of Mouse. That's friends at Disney.
Intellectual property.
That's right.
We'll talk about that another time. Because we know about intellectual property.
Oh, they make us watch videos.
We got booted in the beginning of this with music.
So, well, you just maybe have to be careful with your book.
Yeah, that's true. But I'll be retired by then.
Okay.
I'm not waiting till.
Is there anything that extends past your working time that is?
No, I don't think so. No,
okay,
I mean,
we're gonna check into that.
Yeah, once I close the book, get it? No pun intended. Once I close the book on my career at ABC, and I want to start my career as a writer about all this useless information I have, ABC can have a nice day, because then they'll be out of my life.
And hopefully you get a nice package.
Amen. Amen to that.
Hopefully there's a nice package that follows.
Yes. Yeah. and it's not ticking when they on the way out. Yeah.
Well, we kept it real for you. We hope you enjoyed.
We had a good Sunday.
Peter was awesome.
Yeah, he was great.
And we did. And if you're tuning in today and you haven't caught any of any else of what we've any of our other interviews, go back and watch. And I even love when you comment, because it's even funnier to watch comments on something that nobody's going to respond to. But go back and watch them, and you're doing that, which is great. We've had some great interviews.
Guests.
Absolutely,
great guests,
and more coming.
More on the way.
We're not letting go.
Endless.
Today, we're not just 2 hacks, we're 3 hacks in the studio.
That's 3.
3 hacks.
That's a hat trick for all you hockey fans out there.
Hey, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Stay healthy. Wash your hands.
Peace.
Don't touch your face.
Don't touch your face.
Nez.
That was awesome.